Have you heard your claim? Your claim now is this. He was a literary genius, the Shakespeare of his time that travelled the world, but nobody knew it.
You know what would be nice? It would be nice if you applied the same level of skepticism to the claim that your father is your father. Have you done any experiments involving evolution?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Oh, don't even think about it, please.
No, I think I did. No, I don't. Well, why do you go against academic science?
Who says we do?
Everything you want to say.
Because you don't understand evolution if you think that we came from
I don't think you understand evolution, to be honest. Which model of evolution do you believe is true? Which model?
Which model?
Yeah, which version of it?
You want to Google that as well?
There's 5 versions, which one is true? Yeah, which one?
They're overarching.
Rather than hauling you over the
I
coals.
told you we can rinse you on every single thing you're saying, but I particularly want to rinse you on this particular thing. So, you've made the claim that Muhammad was a literary genius. You don't believe he was illiterate. Now, we provided evidence that he was illiterate. Now, you give me anything that refutes that. Anyone that says he wasn't illiterate.
Okay.
Do you have anything?
Muhammad couldn't read.
Yeah, no, but he thinks he could. He thinks he was a literary genius. So do you have anything to support what he's saying? I'm not interested in could, would, should.
Muhammad couldn't.
My brother, one second.
You know?
Forget could, would, should.
Read. He couldn't.
Forget could, would, should.
These are
Forget could, would, should. We've shown you what you asked for. Look, you said I want the Quran to say Muhammad was illiterate.
No, but it doesn't necessarily.
So why'd you ask for it then? Why did you ask for it then?
Okay, I'd have to research the.
Unlettered prophet.
Okay, let me.
It's more specific than that. It's more specific than just making it.
It's the word similar to another word.
It's much more.
If I'm wrong, then I'm wrong. But if I find evidence of this that I know that you should know about,
Can I give you something? Can I suggest something?
Anyhow, right. So we've said now, we've given you evidence, we've provided the reasons why we believe he was illiterate.
The verse I have is different to that verse, by the way.
What?
The verse that I have is different to that verse and more
Go on,
clear.
then, go on, give us the verse. Hear the verse.
So-
let the Quran speak for itself.
So why don't you read it for me? So this is chapter 29, verse 48. Just read it out loud.
39:48.
Yes, this is chapter 39. Read verse 48 and just read it out. And this is spoken to Muhammad.
And you did not recite before it any scripture, nor did you inscribe one with your right hand. Then, otherwise, the falsifiers would have had cause for doubt.
So the Quran is saying you couldn't read and you couldn't write. If you could, then the people who bring this argument that you're bringing would have had cause for doubt.
Okay, when was this revealed?
The Prophet Muhammad during his time that he was renewing Revelation.
Was this in Medina or Mecca?
It's irrelevant.
I don't know if I'm honest with you, but what's relevant at that point?
Because if people are making a claim to him in to try and say this isn't coming from you, this isn't coming from God, you're literate, then he would put something like that in there.
No, opposite way around. So now, so let's flip this argument then. If he's responding to people who say you can read and write, then all of the people that followed him that had access to this verse, which would have been everyone essentially, because when the words were revealed, they were orally transmitted to the people immediately. So there was no way of him jotting it down because he couldn't read or write. It was an oral transmission, and it was immediately recorded. So there was no editorial process. You couldn't go in afterwards and say, you know what, adjust this because I didn't mean it that way. It was already out there. So there was no control over the way that the word was recorded by the other people. Now all of these people, and there were thousands of them, and let's say it was later, let's say it was in Medina, and it was hundreds of thousands of them at that stage. Well, all of them had lacked the integrity to call this out. Of someone saying, so they're reading a book and this man is saying that he's the messenger of God, and the book says that he can't read and write. Actually, I know you can read and write.
That's a lie.
So what would I do in that scenario?
Hold on.
Just give me the scenario.
If the Quran was the first book and there wasn't much literature before the Quran, who's going to have the ability to write things down to say Muhammad is actually literate?
No, you just missed the point.
Missed the point. All of these people. Now, if let me put myself in a scenario of someone who knows that the Prophet Muhammad could read or write, so I'm taking your position at the time, and I've seen this verse that he's brought that says you can't read or write. I've shown you. So let me read the verse out again, and the verse is, and you did not recite before any scripture, nor did you inscribe one with your right hand, then indeed otherwise the falsifiers would have had cause for doubt. So the verse says that you can't read and you can't write. If you could have, then the people who wanted to falsify you would have reason to doubt, which is the position that you're taking. Now, all of the people who had access to this, who knew that the Prophet Muhammad, taking your example, could read or write, what would they do?
They would know the Quran's false.
They would reject the religion wholesale.
Because
What does history tell you that happened in that time? The people wholesale became Muslims. So the historical facts.
I know they wholesale became Muslims.
No, not only that, but the ones that were the enemies of Islam, when they heard those verses, what would they have said? They would have rejoiced.
They said, "How does an
They would have said,
man
"Look,
come out of the mountain blazing
you've
with
just
poverty?"
said something that's a lie."
But do you think people were as rational back then as we are now?
Come on,
Or do you
please.
think we're less rational?
Listen,
We're less
really.
rational now.
I think you're
We're
less
less
rational.
rational now.
To be
I'll tell you why.
honest. Yes.
I'll tell you why.
You think so?
Yes.
To
'Cause
say
we wanna
that
see everything in front
to
of
say
us.
that someone that's historically documented as
Well,
illiterate,
that's rational, isn't
to,
it?
no,
To see
just
everything
no,
in front of us.
to say that someone historically
irrational.
is documented as being literate and unable to read and write, to say that this person was then a literary genius who did things that were unavailable to him, so travelled all over the world, gathered all this information about different religions, worked out how to describe natural phenomena in an accurate way that wasn't available for, and etc, 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 and all these, and you attribute to one person. So don't deal with one point in that. Deal with the concepts.
A full paradigm.
That
No, because-
you're taking contrary information and you're accepting all could be true at the same time. That's irrational.
All the things that you just said, like explaining natural phenomena.
That's one
like,
thing.
No, but all the rest, like when we had this conversation, the things that I couldn't answer at the time, I went home, researched it.
You're
and
talking
found
about natural
other-
phenomena. That was
other-
one verse. Okay, take
other,
natural
like,
phenomena
logical-
out. Forget natural phenomena.
No, but
what's
even,
the next part of it?
even things like
Do you accept
uh,
Muhammad wasn't illiterate? After what we've presented?
No, because
You still don't?
No, because that is just a logic game of like it's like a wordplay. If this, then that. It doesn't really. It
Oh,
doesn't
okay, I'll make it
follow.
easy for you.
It doesn't
If I
follow
was
that-
pretending to you I'm getting revelation from God, right, and you knew I could read and write, and then I bring this revelation that says I can't read and write, what would you think? What would you think? Would you say this is wrong?
if this guy is.
No, just say my point. I said it. I'm saying to you,
Hyper-skeptical.
you know I can read and write. I'm bringing something to you that says I can't read and write.
How many people do you think knew that he could read? or
I'm asking you a simple
couldn't
question.
read?
What should
I don't know how many.
I'm
people
asking
could-
you. I'm talking about me. You know I can read and write. I bring something that says I can't read and write. Is that true or not?
If I know you can read,
Yes.
then no,
It's
not.
false. Now, if that thing told you to do things that's going to cost you your families, and would you follow it, knowing it's a lie?
No.
No. But they did follow it.
But how did they know that he could read or could not read or write? Maybe he just kept that thing private.
There-
So now
there
you're
were-
saying
there
the
were two-
literary genius and knew. One second.
There were two
So now you're saying he's a literary genius that nobody knew about.
So there were two ways.
Apart from
40 years. Oh my
apart from
giddy
his followers.
There were two-
Wait,
there
there
were
was
two
no
ways.
followers.
He had who wrote the
No,
Hadith?
when he
Scribes.
came with revelation, there was no followers.
Of course, yeah.
Right. So you're saying
But he gave.
Have you heard your claim? Your claim now is this: he was a literary genius, the Shakespeare of his time, that travelled the world, but nobody knew it.
Maybe it's like a Stephen Hawking's guy, and he did everything in his head.
Maybe you could fly.
Maybe he did fly on a.
I mean, this
on
is
a
how
horse
ridiculous it's
back
getting.
up
This
to-
is
Yeah,
how
maybe he
crazy-
could fly
And
on
you
on a
think we're
horse.
more
How
rational
ridiculous-
in this day and
How
age?
ridiculous could it be? Maybe could fly off
This
on
is
a
the
horse.
irrationality
Do you not
of
understand?
You just said maybe he
hyper-skepticism.
could fly. That's ridiculous, but he did fly off.
Have you just?
didn't he?
Are
No,
you
he
hearing
wasn't
yourself?
he was
Listen,
on
listen,
a fly, not a winged
listen,
horse.
listen.
What
Come back
was it?
to Earth. Come back to
Exactly.
Earth. Right.
See, you're see, the thing is the thing. When you're
You're
hyper-skeptical,
holding on to things now which are ridiculous.
You're hyper-skeptical.
History tells us he couldn't read and write. You're claiming he could.
You know what?
So bring
No,
any evidence.
You know
to
what
support
would be
you're
nice?
saying.
There
You know what
is-
would be nice?
What?
It would be nice if you applied the same level of skepticism to the claim that your father is your father.
Oh, I have done.
Wait, when was the DNA test?
You said it was 99.9%.
When was the DNA test?
Likely.
So-
I want you to apply the same skepticism that you're applying to this, to the claim that you make that your father is your father. Then I would say you're rational and you're
And I want you to ask your doctor for his certificate before you get any medication from
like I
it.
said, if
Because it's possible that your father's not your father.
And then when you get the medication, Google the medication to make sure it does what it says it claims to do.
You could get doppelgangers, people who look like some other people but they're not related at all. You could
Are you gonna show us a picture of that?
you could be the child of a cousin.
So you're going to show me a
You
guy
could
with
be
long hair
adopted.
and a goatee beard?
No, here he is with bald man.
Looks nothing like you.
Nothing like me. Okay. Not many people see this. Not many people see this. Look at this hair.
Oh wow!
Okay. What's that mean?
I see now why he's got.
Are you saying you two are the only bald people in this world?
No, I'm saying it's very unlike.
No, it's not.
We
No,
are.
it's
We've
not.
got the same face structure and everything.
What? Let me have a look. Nah.
Looks like you. I think that looks like. I think that looks like.
I don't think so.
I think you two look pretty closely
I
related.
don't think so.
But this is what I mean. You don't apply that level of skepticism that you're applying to this,
Because I don't
which has
need
this.
to. Even if my dad wasn't my dad, I wouldn't care because he
That's
still
not
brought
the
me
point.
up as my
That's not the
dad.
point. That's not the principle.
No, it is.
No, it's not.
It's an irrelevant. It's an irrelevant.
No, it's
thing
not
that I
irrelevant.
don't care about.
Hamza.
Okay, so
Okay,
my,
let's calm things down a bit. Look. All we're saying is this.
No, because stay on point.
But we're going
Do
around
you
in
still,
circles,
so just a
aren't
minute,
we?
so let's just understand. All right, let me just say this last thing, if you don't mind. So we provided all our historical evidence why we come to the conclusion that Muhammad Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam wasn't illiterate, and you now still say he was literate, and you have no evidence.
no, I'm saying it's still a possibility.
We've got
Look,
no evidence.
Look,
We've got no evidence.
Well, you've not got.
No, we give you our
proof.
evidence. No, we give you our evidence. We give you our reasons
No,
why.
but it's not.
No, just listen
it's
to what I'm
not,
saying. Do you have anything to counter
It's
it?
not convincing.
He's doing.
Do you,
or,
do you have
Or
anything to counter it?
unbiased
Do you have
evidence.
anything to counter it?
Logic, yeah.
No, have you got any history that counters it?
I was giving you the reason why religion
No.
was probably
Do you have?
created.
No, I said, do you have
So-
any? No, forget that. Do you have any?
No, because the thing is, you don't believe in evolution.
No, I'm saying to
Who
you very
says that?
simply.
Why are you making this up?
No,
I believe in
he's,
evolution.
Listen.
because he's already said
Listen.
you believe I came from a fish. He doesn't
Listen,
understand.
no, actually, which model of evolution do you believe is true?
Well, I don't believe we came from a fish.
He's changing the topic.
Yeah, which model?
No,
yeah.
no, because I was trying to give an explanation of why religion was created.
Forget that.
In a
I'm not
natural
interested in that.
sense.
All I want to know
And
right
when-
now,
no, but when,
at this
when you,
juncture, I just want to establish one thing.
When
You're
you-
making baseless claims. That's all I want to establish.
No.
Do you have any evidence to support your claim that Muhammad could read and write? Anything?
do you, yes.
All right, bring it.
Give me 5 minutes.
Answering us now.
I don't mind. Anything you want to bring.
Okay.
Because whatever he brings will disprove the Quran. So this is good. This is Nobel Prize winning stuff.
No, don't say. I've never said
Keep
that.
Googling, don't make this short.
I never said that I could disprove the Quran.
No, you just
Stay
said, well,
skeptical.
you will, because if the Quran says Muhammad was unlettered, and you're saying, no, he could read and write, the Quran's wrong, therefore, not the word of God, therefore, you disprove the
But listen,
Quran.
do you appreciate that if you follow that line of thought, then there is nothing real anymore? That everything is effectively, purely, could be this, could be that, might be this, might be that. There's no reality.
Why do you believe evolution is
No,
true?
no, there is a
Why do you
real-
believe
No,
evolution is
but
true?
there isn't, is there? How do you know
there's-
your brain is not in some vat somewhere and everything that we see now is not real? You're just thinking it's real.
Almost 100% of scientists believe.
Why do you believe what the scientists say?
Because why? Because they're peer reviewed. So when science, when
Why do you believe
scientists
what their
makes
peers
a
say?
claim, then other scientists spend.
How do you know they're not in collaboration?
So hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of scientists all around the world are in some sort of conspiracy.
Now, wait a second.
how
Wait a
did
second.
it-
No,
now
he's-
you're
no,
being
wait a second.
ridiculous.
No,
Why
wait,
is your
wait.
standard? This is your
Listen,
standard,
listen.
though. You
Listen,
need evidence for
listen,
anything.
wait a
Just believe what I
second.
like.
You know the point you made about.
Because
Listen, you know the point that you just made.
His
name's Lister, right?
Lister.
You know,
Okay,
it's
sorry.
Red Dwarf.
Oh yeah.
There's certain.
I keep seeing the cat.
Can I just say something very quickly? So the point you made, and I understand it, about to not believe in what all the scientists are saying, or say that they are somehow in some big conspiracy to falsify the truth, is exactly the point I made to you about the thousands of believers who said the Prophet Muhammad was illiterate.
Because they didn't all know
no.
of his
How do you know
literacy?
that? This is the whole point. Is so now Tommy, we have two equal understandings of conspiracy theories, but you're saying that your one is somehow valid, and the other ones who maybe say about the scientists is invalid. Now I don't believe in conspiracy theories anyway. There's two reasons why. There's two reasons why.
Hold on, can I just give you a quick difference of now and then? So now, literacy rates in the UK are almost at like 90%, if not higher.
Higher, probably, yeah.
Use Google it. Can you
100%.
find your Google, please?
Back in Muhammad's time, literacy rates would have been so
Please.
low that literacy wouldn't have even been
So
a
it's-
thing
so
that's
it's
talked
even
about
more- it's-
amongst
so
the,
that would
amongst
make-
the illiterate people.
So it's even more likely that the Prophet Muhammad would have been illiterate.
Exactly.
Just makes the point stronger.
Well, maybe he was, but then still doesn't.
Well, no, he can't be
disprove-
literate genius if he's literate.
No, he could be because.
Oh, he could be.
Well, Stephen Hawkins can't write things down, but he
All right.
he still.
Let me just say that again.
He does a lot of in his
Can,
head because he's.
can you be a literate genius if you can't write?
Of course you can.
What's
Spoken,
what does-
spoken word.
Is a literate genius written
poetry.
word?
You don't have to write it down. You can memorize a story and
All right.
pull
All right.
that.
So are you now
Literary.
conceding he couldn't read and write then?
Impossible.
Well, no, you said he could.
But
I
everything's
said
possible
everything's
in this,
impossible.
So that's the problem.
But
Everything
no.
is impossible. You got to take a stance somewhere. That's what you're
Honestly,
not doing. That's
it's
why the reason
ridiculous.
it's
No, I
difficult.
don't think you have to take a stance.
That's the problem.
I think
That's the problem.
You're delusional.
No, I think belief in religion or God should be a personal.
Do you accept you're delusional? Do you accept you're delusional? Right, I'm going to prove to you you're delusional. Right, because we give you evidence against what you believe, and you've got nothing to count. Yes, it is evidence. Yes, it is.
It's just it's just words.
We've got historical evidence.
So Tommy Robinson wrote a book. Do you believe everything in that? Like, I'm not a Tommy Robinson fan. I spend a lot of my time going to far right rallies to debate them
we
as well.
give you
like I'm
historical
debating you,
evidence.
so before
Listen,
anyone gets involved.
you said Muhammad can't read. You said Muhammad can
No,
read.
but people
no,
can
listen,
write anything
listen,
down.
Listen,
It's bullshit.
Listen. You said Muhammad could read and write. We've given you evidence that he couldn't read or write. Yet you still believe he could read and write, which means you're delusional, mate. Because
No,
you're
no,
ignoring
I
the
don't believe
evidence.
anything.
Yes, you are.
No, I don't believe
No,
anything.
he's right. He doesn't believe anything. That's the problem.
No,
you got to have some basis,
No,
some
no,
stance.
I think that is the
you can talk.
problem of our society. People believe things
so what
to
do you
be
believe,
true
mister?
when
No, he doesn't believe anything written.
Hold on, what do you
He
believe
doesn't
in?
written.
I honestly don't believe in anything.
So Islam could be true then, according to you.
Are you here?
Could be, yeah. I could be
So
wrong.
what are you doing then? Why are you ignoring it?
Why am I ignoring it?
Yeah, why are you ignoring the guidance?
I think it's very, very unlikely.
Why?
Like, it's one of the most
Based on what? Based on what?
Based on logic.
What logic?
Logic. You haven't presented any logic. That's the thing. It's just all
No,
maybe
you're logical.
possibly.
I can't believe you said you were logical. You're logical. You're the antithesis of logical.
Humans are known for their lies throughout history,
What?
all the time. I'm not going to trust.
Do you believe what history says? Do you believe in history?
I,
No, do you?
He-
I need to know who
no,
I'm
that's a good
talking
question.
to.
He
Do
doesn't
you
believe
believe what
anything.
history says?
sometimes yes, sometimes
And
no.
what is the determining factor for you to accept it to be true or not?
No, but do you not think that history is written by the
No,
victors?
what is the determining factor for you to believe what the
Do
history?
you believe everything history has to say?
No, I asked you the question, and you said sometimes
Well,
you believe
no,
it's true.
no. Well, it's
I asked you the question, my man. You said sometimes I believe history is true. So I'm asking you now, what is your criteria? What is the determining factor for
okay.
you to accept it to
So
be true?
I'll believe in certain things. Like I believe that we've been to like out of the atmosphere because I've seen the evidence.
Do you believe man landed on the moon?
I think that's possibly not true, but most likely it is true.
I think that really
for
some.
God's sake.
This is the
You got
nugget.
spinners, mate!
Okay, but here's the
Do you
thing.
believe the Earth is flat?
No, no. The reason
Did
why.
World
Do
War
you
One
think the world
happen?
is round
Okay,
or flat?
let me just.
No, is the world round or
so
flat?
you guys believe we definitely went to the moon, yeah?
I think the
I don't remember having this
evidence-
conversation.
The overwhelming
No, 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 no,
evidence
I agree.
probably points towards the fact it's more rational or reasonable for me
That we did.
to believe that we did. Yes.
However, so there is one video that I've seen where they are pretending, and you can go and Google this. A funny thing happened on the way to the moon. There's a video clip of them pretending that they're further away from Earth and filming the Earth, and it's like this small. And then all of a sudden, their camera equipment changes, and the Earth expands into this massive thing. And the date on this footage is from when they should have been like almost at the moon. So if they did go, then they went and they faked some things just in case they didn't get there.
Do you think that
Or-
man landed on the moon?
This
Yes
is
or
the
no?
pro- this is the problem. This is the problem.
Hold on, no, but I think.
Lister, do you think man landed on the moon? Yes or no?
I think we have, yes.
Yes.
But there is.
Let's not
but
talk
there-
about that then.
No, but there is evidence to suggest that we might not have. So like I'm saying, both
If
options
you
are
can't take a
possible.
stance on something, you can't have a discussion.
No, it's true.
And that's the problem.
And that's
No,
that.
no.
But thank you for establishing that. Thank you for wrecking our other conversation, claiming you're logical, and then
You know what? The thing that I want to thank you, and I'm going to buy maybe coffee or something, is showing us your hair, because that's brave to do that in a little camera.
Yeah.
What do you mean, right?
Showing the lack of hair.
Yeah.
That was quite
honestly,
brave.
my friends don't get that. So
Oh, well, they're gonna now.
Listen, see, if you follow the stance that you're following,
Yeah, you don't make a.
It's a road to
you
nowhere,
make
mate.
no decisions.
Road to nowhere.
You make look simple. I say to this to people: when you bought that phone or you bought those headphones, did you do any research to find out what they were, what the reviews were, etc., etc.? Right. Now, you based your opinion based upon what?
Yeah, but that's still an opinion. And then
But
once,
you make- but you-
then once I have it in my hands, and then I realise, oh, this is a good product, I'm going to get it again, because I buy a lot of headphones because they always break.
But you did some research
Yeah.
and you evaluated, and on balance of probability, because it's not a certainty, it was on balance of probability that you appreciated that it's probably more likely for me to buy that product is better than that product, correct?
Yeah.
So you made a decision. That's how we are, human beings, that's how we make decisions. Now you ask us, what's the evidence for Muhammad being illiterate? So we give you solid arguments, historical evidence, and rational arguments in relation to support that claim, right? So on balance of probability, what you should do, just like when you bought those headphones, is that you say, on balance of probability, is it more likely that Muhammad was this literally genius, or on balance of probability, is it more likely that he was probably illiterate? And that's how we. Now, if we say no, I need absolute certainty before I believe this or that, you will never make a decision in life, and you would have never bought those headphones.
But I think it's slightly more important when we're talking about religion.
Absolutely. And that is why it's more important to make the decision than buying those headphones.
What?
Rather than saying that, well, we don't know, it could be this, it could be that, I'm not making any decision.
The thing is,
Because, let me just finish, Lister. Because the consequence
this is Pascal's wager.
the consequence of you getting it wrong
Pascal's wager. He told me that
when it comes to headphones is neither here nor there. You can buy another set, right?
But here we
But
go.
the
He's
consequence.
just explaining Pascal's wager.
But no, it's not Pascal's wager.
Yeah, but it's the consequence.
No,
of Pascal's wager.
what I'm saying to you is that
Consequences of me being
the
wrong about Islam.
consequence of not getting it right or not caring what is right are far more graver.
No, it's not that I don't care. It's
No, you really don't care.
No, I cannot follow a God that brings children into this world and lets them starve and suffer.
Oh my God, he's channeling Stephen Fry now. Oh my Gideon.
No, it's true
How
though.
dare you?
It's true.
Okay. Can I ask you a question?
God is not something. If he is there to be worshipped, he wants to be worshipped. Then because he is such a savage. And I'm quite happy to say that.
Why do you have no, but why
He's so emotional.
But
So
the
emotional.
thing is,
No, but
if he,
the rationale
if
has left
I-
the
if I
building.
have to
He has
meet
to
him,
go
and then he sends me to
No,
hell.
why
for-
do you have to? Why
for
do you
taking
have?
inspiration
But
from
why?
his
Why
prophets?
should we resort to vulgarity?
Because that's what he has done on
Why
this
should
planet.
we resort to vulgarity?
Because that's what he's done on this
Is
planet.
your opinion about morality and
If
absolute?
he's an all-knowing,
Wait a second.
all-powerful, all-knowing and all-powerful, all-seeing God, then he would not let the suffering that exists happen on this planet because it's
What suffering?
What suffering? Come on.
So how can you hate
causes
someone
suffering?
that doesn't exist?
So you made decision.
I don't hate him. I'm just saying that he cannot exist for that reason.
All right,
No,
so,
that doesn't
so
make
because
sense.
children die, God doesn't exist, and we evolve from whatever you claim we evolved from.
Or they get cancer.
That's what you believe.
It's because they die in ways because of him. If he's all-powerful and
Because of
all-knowing,
him.
he should have realised that sending prophets down multiple times is going to create religious conflict that will never, ever,
Do you believe that
ever
alcohol? Do
be
you believe that
solved.
alcohol is a good or bad thing?
It's used for good and it's used for bad.
Do you believe it's a good or bad thing?
religion is used for good and it's used for
Okay,
bad.
why do you keep changing the subject?
Religion
Do
is
you believe
used for
alcohol is a good or
and I
bad
believe
thing?
it's
Do you
used
think
for bad.
alcohol is good for a society or bad for a society?
It can be used, it can be good, it can be bad.
How can it be
Depends how
good?
it's used.
How can it be good?
What do you mean how can it be good?
How can it be good?
Because it lets us relax after a long week at work.
Why do you need to relax?
No, but Hamza, can I just go back to your point?
Why
Can I just no, but Hamza, can I just go back to your point about
why-
children dying?
Why do we need to do anything?
Can I just
Okay,
go back
why
to
do
your
I need to pray?
point?
To connect to my creator.
No, hold on, Hamza.
Go on.
Why do you believe
It's one of our
that because there's suffering, God doesn't exist?
Yeah, that's it.
Why do you-
Emotional
why do you believe
atheist.
that?
Emotional atheist.
Why do you believe that? Why is that logical?
No, so it's more to the exact point that if God is all powerful and all knowing, He would have realised that He would create religious wars and conflicts over Him
Create religious
by
wars and
sending
conflicts.
prophets down and messages down to certain prophets and certain people that they're going to get the messages wrong. Like he's going to
Hold on,
realise
let
that
me
he's going to everything up.
Okay.
Or
okay.
or make it worse than
Okay,
it already
I don't
was.
agree with most of what you said, but however, even if logically what you said was correct, why does that necessitate that there's no God?
I'm not saying it necessarily does. I think that there likely is a creator.
Oh, so you do believe in a God?
Yes.
You just said there is no.
But I don't think he's up there.
He's so inconsistent, that's the problem.
No, I don't. What I said more likely. I don't think he's up there wanting to be worshipped. So, like when we
What does
play,
it mean to worship God? What do you
Okay,
think it means?
Hold on, listen to me. So, have you heard of the simulation?
What do you think it means to
have you
worship
heard
God?
of the simulation theory?
Yeah.
So if we
We're in the Matrix.
So if we can eventually create replicas of the universe, and this is what scientists actually think about, and think is quite, some of them think it's quite likely, if we can create replicas of the universe and our technological advancements are such that we can make it exactly the same, which is going to happen in the future, then how do we know that we are not in one of those simulations? So maybe we are our own gods, and we are just there, like, do you know when
Let's
you
talk
play?
about now.
Hold on. So when you
I
play
think,
things,
I think we've
It's good
reached,
because it's
I
good
think we've
because
reached
we've got,
a point.
we've got to the stage where we understand where all this is coming from.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because really, if you, nothing is true.
If
Enjoy.
in the future.
So you're
Let's talk
and you're a
about now.
simulation.
Yeah.
Well, we're all a simulation.
Sad thing is you came into this argument as if you knew so much and you know so
but
little.
here's the thing: there's so much evidence to suggest that free will doesn't exist. So
What
religion.
evidence?
So
What
okay.
evidence?
So there's.
What's free will?
So scientists have studied people's MRI things, and other ways of scanning the brain. They make people have like an arbitrary choice. So they've got to tell they've got to make a note of when they're aware of when they're just about to make a choice. And scientists can predict before the person is aware when they are going to make that choice, which choice they're going to make. There's plenty of.
What does that do?
So scientists can predict what choice
Which
you're going to make.
scientists? You talk like scientists like it's
What's got to do with
scientists,
God
there's so many
exists or
different scientists.
doesn't
Which
exist?
scientist? Which branch of science is that?
Brother Hamza, can you ask him when he says God?
So
what does
I'm
he
aware of the
mean
studies.
when
So
he
what are you saying that it suggests?
What does he mean by creative?
I'm aware of the studies. What do you say that
there
it
could be a
suggests?
creator?
So you are aware of this studies. So
But
it
he just
suggests
said
that free will
why
doesn't
God
exist.
thinks-
Why does it
Yeah.
suggest?
Why?
So
What's that?
let's.
Have you not realised it's inconsistent and irrational?
So we don't choose what we're attracted to, what we like, or what our accents sound like. If we become conscious of like, oh, we have a lisp and it's like making us become bullied, then we might go to a speech therapist and then really work hard at changing our voice. But this is why everybody in the same place usually has the same kind of accent, because we are naturally, just naturally are enticed to sound like other people. So we're born as blank slates.
We're not born as blank.
We're with DNA, like.
You mean genetically? Not. Well,
Sorry?
how do you mean blank slates?
So like we need to be we don't know how to survive on our own, and we need to be taught how to survive in that sense. We instinctively know where to go for food.
That's not a blank slate. So if you have instincts already,
Oh yeah, but
Then it's not a-
so we've got
Okay.
the DNA, but that's still not like. I'm not choosing to. So a baby doesn't choose to cry; it's just instinctive to cry because something's wrong, and then eventually
What is making-
they get
Sorry?
attention.
What's the point he's making?
The point making that we don't have free will.
What's that got to do with babies crying?
He's trying to say that.
So a baby's hungry. It doesn't know what to do. If something's wrong, it starts crying out of instinct, and then it learns that when it cries, its mum comes over.
Right.
So then next time it cries.
So it chooses to cry.
Somebody forced you to come to the park today.
So once it realises, so what you're saying is now, when it
have free will.
realises,
You have no choice to
mum
go.
will come when it cries. When
That's
it
free
wants
will.
something, it will choose to cry.
No. So okay.
Pretend to cry. Yes.
We don't have free will.
Yes.
No. But
You just demonstrate it's not a free will. The baby instinctively cries when it wants something, and then when it realises mum comes when it cries, then when it wants something, it knows to pretend to cry.
So our basic instincts are not by choice; they are instincts.
Yes.
What I'm saying is, life is now more complex than basic instincts. So we also, alongside basic instincts, we have complex instincts.
Did you choose to come here today?
That
I
are
just want to know. I just want
that
to
are
know.
so complex.
Did you choose to come here today?
The choice that I felt like I made is an illusion. It felt like I chose to come here, but it's an illusion.
Why?
You know, one verse comes to mind
Because-
after our discussion.
yeah.
This verse is in Surah Kahf, chapter 18, verse 56. Very poignant. And we sent not the messengers except as bringers of good tidings and warners, and those who disbelieve and dispute by using falsehood to attempt to invalidate thereby the truth have taken my verses and that of which they are warned in ridicule. In other words, there are some people, regardless of the evidence that you show them, they will simply find reason to ridicule it,
Like
and they
evolution.
will find reason. You see, does
do you say
evolution prove the non-existence of God?
Yeah, but why don't you believe it? Because there's so
Who
much
says we
evidence.
don't?
Who says we
Who
don't?
says we don't?
You're
No, I
listening
don't
to
know. Well, I asked you which model.
Have you been to the?
I asked you which model. Which model?
Yeah, I have even average.
Tell me the mechanism of evolution.
So
What's the mechanism?
So
What's the
basically,
homology?
so basically, two people come together. They'll have offspring. Sometimes their offspring will come with like a glitch.
Which model is this though? I don't understand. What's the name of it? The model. There's 5 models.
I'm not an expert.
You claim to be, but which one?
Well, I'm not an expert, but you don't need to be an expert.
So some
to
offspring
understand
come
that
with a
it's
glitch,
true.
yes?
Alright, yeah. So mutation, yeah?
A mutation, yeah.
Oh, so mutation. You believe in evolutionary mutation? Really?
No, hold on, we accept that. So what's the problem? Sorry?
So the mutation, sometimes that's a benefit, and that
No, I'm
mutation
just trying to
helps them
understand.
survive.
So you believe evolution through mutation? That's your how we're all here today.
There's numerous ways that we evolve.
No.
So there's also ways where our genes can get switched on in certain environments.
Does that disprove
and then,
God?
And then
Does that disprove God?
no, but why don't you believe it? When
Who says we don't?
He doesn't believe it.
What
What
does
are
he
you asking me to
What
believe?
does he not believe?
What are you asking me to believe?
That
What are you asking me to believe?
that we evolved from animals.
So you're asking me to believe my ancestor was a monkey? Or an ape-like animal or what? What are you asking me to believe? What's your claim?
Do you not believe that we evolved from?
What's your claim? Tell me what you think I
we
should
doesn't
evolved
believe
from
anything.
apes.
So what's he
No,
going
no,
to
but what do you
Is that
understand?
an absolute proof? Is it absolute?
All the evidence.
What are you asking me that I should
suggests
accept?
Like
No, I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask you that. I didn't ask
What are
you
you
that.
asking me to
I said,
accept?
is that an absolute truth?
There's more evidence to show that evolution is true than that the Quran is.
Listen,
Hold on
I'll
a
say it
second.
again to you.
Why
What
are
are
you
you asking
why
me to believe?
are you comparing the two though?
What are you asking me to believe?
Did we evolve from?
What does that mean? Explain to me what you think it means. What were they before
love a
monkeys?
coffee.
So before monkeys, we were probably some sort of shrew.
Coffee. I'd love a tea, please. Tea. A shrew. Coffee.
I love
Before
a
the
tea.
shrew, what were we?
Yeah, you're right with that.
Probably some sort
Sure,
of
exactly.
lizard.
And before the lizard?
Some amphibious.
Oh, no.
Go on, some amphibious creature.
No, I want to go to the thing that he mocked me for, saying evolution was, and he's actually going to describe it. And what before the amphibious creature?
It was probably some sort of form of.
Go on, say it, you can say it.
Bacteria.
No, you missed the link.
Oh, fish. Go on.
Hey! No, you mocked me for thinking evolution was evolved from fish, and you've just described evolution as evolved from a fish.
So do you not believe we evolved from a fish?
No, well, you do. And you mocked me for thinking evolution was that. No, I don't believe I evolved from a fish. No, I don't.
So
Do you?
So do you
Do
go
you?
against? You go against the overwhelming
Do
evidence.
you believe you evolved from a fish?
I believe we evolved from monkeys,
No.
which evolved from. I believe we went down something that
Do you
resembles that.
believe you evolved from a fish?
Well, when you put it like that, no, I believe humans evolved from monkeys.
Which evolved from?
Monkeys evolved from
From
Females didn't
Monkeys
evolve
evolved
from
from what?
I mean, I don't know
No,
what the
monkey
catch
no,
is.
it's very, very simple. I said to you, you asked me, do I believe in
You're saying you're telling me that I go against all the evidence,
Listen,
but
no,
then you go against all the
listen,
evidence.
no,
when it comes to evolution.
What I said.
Show
You
me
think
your-
that?
Show me your.
All right, one second.
Evidence.
You said to me, do I believe in evolution? And I said to you, what, I think I evolved from a fish? No, I don't. And you laughed at me, saying, haha, you think evolution means evolved from a fish. So then I ask you to explain evolution, and you explain it to me, evolving from a fish. Do you not understand what you're saying? Do you not listen to yourself?
But the way.
No, I do not believe I evolved from a fish. Prove to me I evolved from a fish.
Okay, so we have fish have this synapse that goes from their like throat area to their like. It's a really short thing, and then it goes somewhere to their lungs. Whereas humans have this same synapse, but because we've evolved and our bits have got moved around as throughout the millions of years that we've evolved, this synapse has gone all the way around our organs and then back up. So it's very inefficient for the brain sending signals all the way around the body when they need to be done like really quickly. So this shows us that the fish has we've evolved from the fish, and it wasn't guided by God, because if we were made to be perfect, this synapse would just would bypass all of our organs and go straight there, because it's the most efficient, perfect route for it to go. But it didn't do that.
Who told you this?
It's I mean, I don't know who told me. I can't remember.
Why do you believe that's true?
Can I just ask one question?
Why don't you look into it?
No, but can I ask you one question?
We've got a doctor
No,
here.
but can I just ask you one question?
Is that true?
No,
No.
in a nutshell, it's not true.
Is there nothing that I said that sound like?
You've said some things that are true, like your name, and I think everything else.
Everything else is like.
No, hold on a second.
I'm just joking,
I'm
I'm
doubting that now as well.
problem-
Because
the problem-
according to
No,
Lister,
Lister, he's a red dwarf. He's made up that name.
according to Lister,
No way did your dad call you Lister.
My surname is Lister. There
Yeah.
was three,
Don't-
there's
don't-
three
don't
people
reveal
called
that.
Mark in my class.
Yeah, I know your name's not. I know your name.
no, but Lister, can I just ask you one question?
Is your name Mark Lister?
Imran,
Okay.
look, Lister.
You look like a red dwarf.
Can I just ask you one
Don't-
question?
I'm not a big red
Look, can I just
No,
ask you
no,
one?
I do like
Listen,
it.
can I just ask you one question, right? Whether that's scientifically accurate or not, to me is irrelevant. I'm asking you the question. Even if that is,
In fact, it came from,
even
it
if
came
that is
from Richard
true,
Dawkins.
even if that
Definitely
is
not true.
true,
Richard Dawkins.
no, but even if that
Do you
is
know
true,
the evolving from the
I
fish
don't,
is
I
up?
don't even like Richard Dawkins.
Okay,
But this idea we want
Hamza,
from
hold
fish
on.
is dead.
No,
Long
but
ago.
no,
It's a new
but
model now.
Hamza, wait.
dead?
Even if that's true, why does that necessitate that God doesn't exist?
I'm not saying. I've never said that God doesn't exist.
So what's the problem then?
This is why the discussion's not fruitful.
So what's the
No,
problem?
wait, he's saying to me that as if evolution disproves Islam.
Yeah,
That's his point.
It doesn't.
And your model of evolution is debunked.
No, I'm not saying that it disproves Islam. I'm saying that you're having a go at me for going against all this Islamic evidence.
No,
from
because
the
here's the
hadiths and
difference,
things.
Lister.
Whereas I'm going on scientific evidence.
No, you're not, Lister.
Yeah,
I'll tell you why you're not, Lister. We're explaining everything. Everything we said, we believe, we've supported.
No, your evidence
Every time I ask you what you
but
believe, you go to Google.
Your evidence
Every
comes
time.
from people's words from thousands of
Okay,
years
okay,
ago
one
who
second.
have got this
Okay,
agenda
let's-
in trying to
let's-
stop
let's-
this
let's-
religion.
One second. Have you done any experiments involving evolution?
Me personally?
Yeah, you personally.
Oh, don't even think about it, please.
No, I think I did.
Did I? Did I ever try to
Come on,
prove
come on.
evolution in
That's
the
a
lab?
serious question. Serious question.
In school, we did. I remember doing
Yeah,
some
cut a
stuff
frog.
with
Cut a frog.
petri dishes and bacteria and things. Like, that's a bit. When people
Please, please.
Prove evolution.
The point.
So did you? Oh yeah, because I guess you didn't do science in school.
Nobody asked you, can you do any experiments about my evolution? And he said, like, what?
Like, do you know how old I am? I'm 33 years old.
Young man.
15 years ago, I'm pretty sure I did some experiments in school.
For evolution?
about-
About evolution?
What experiment did you do in evolution?
I can't remember exactly, but there was something to do with bacteria and petri dishes.
Cut up a worm.
And the reason why we use bacteria to
Chopped a worm.
investigate evolution is because they what do you call it? Breed. Bacteria doesn't breed, but they.
DNA.
You witnessed
multiple
evolution
times.
in in a petri dish. Is that what you're saying?
So bacteria.
Do you know how many generations that you have to replicate?
Yeah. Do you know how quickly bacteria replicates? So then we can see.
I think I better let the doctor step.
So why it took us so
What does
long?
the bacteria evolve into?
different like.
Bacteria.
Okay, so
Different bacteria.
The point I was
still
trying to make.
hold on. Before you go on, because while these guys are laughing, while it takes us 70 years or to die there or thereabouts,
Oh, dear.
bacteria can reproduce in a matter
but
of
Lister,
minutes.
Lister,
So we can go back.
dear.
Millions of years in the sense of humanity, just
Wow.
in a few days with bacteria.
The point I was trying to make.
Have you found something that is...
That's
let
why
the
that's
doctor-
why
let the
science
doctor-
is
sorry.
bacteria.
Let
So
the
you can
doctor-
laugh all you want, but
Well, no,
you're
here's the
laughing
point
because
we're
you don't
making.
understand what
No,
what
you do
science
not
is.
understand what evolution is. That's
That's
your
all right.
problem.
Go on, you tell me then.
All right, evolution is a change of kind, a change of. Do you understand? From one thing to another.
Let the doctor step in.
Yes.
Eventually,
I hate when you do that.
but that's not.
No.
Evolution can just be a slight change.
No,
from-
that's
from-
adaptation.
Oh yeah, okay. So then it's adaptation. To
Yeah, but we
the,
have no problem with adaptation. We have no problem with bacteria becoming a new, stronger strain of bacteria.
so at some point that adaptation stops and they all stay in the same species.
I don't believe that does that. All right.
And they have these arbitrary
No,
barriers.
no,
where they
no,
go-
down that route.
where-
No,
where-
can I
where-
just explain the
where
Islamic-
species
Can I
go
just say one
from-
thing? One second.
Yeah.
Right. This
Hold
bacteria.
on, because birds have,
All right, okay.
birds have been, you've got this...
Adaptation.
You've got the same birds in
Adaptation.
Africa.
Adaptation.
And
Adaptation. Yes, I know.
and
Adapted to the
South
environment.
America.
We know that.
Yeah, but they're now classed as different species. And eventually things happen.
We have no problem with
They're
that.
birds,
Listen,
but they're
You
birds.
said
But let's not have no
bacteria
problem with that.
multiplies very quickly, yes? Yes? Rapidly, yeah? Is that correct or not? Okay. Has
from
that
Afghanistan, somebody
bacteria
from China,
ever
so what?
become
But they're
anything
Nigerian
other
humans.
than bacteria?
He said they're different species, so what?
It will be different.
No,
types of
has it?
bacteria.
Has it? Yeah, but it's not bacteria, same species.
Bird, hawk, tiger, yeah, maybe
Same
that
species,
one.
yeah?
That's evolution.
Still bacteria. Nothing new, no kind, no change of kind. Darwinian theory requires a change of kind, becomes something else. That it cannot, talk about mammals, they cannot procreate again with each other.
I think that's probably the case, yeah. I'd have to look into it. But do you know that that's definitely not happened?
Well, you said bacteria multiplies very quickly, isn't it?
But do you know that it's definitely not happened?
What, the bacteria's become something other than bacteria? Yeah, definitely, I know that's not
It
happened.
might have happened. That's irrelevant, though. Does that mean that God doesn't exist?
No,
I've never
his
said
challenge
God-
is this. No, that's not about that. The challenge is this. He thinks evolution disproves Islam.
No, I never said that.
Yes, you did.
No, I never said
Yes, you
that.
did. You said evolution disproves the
No,
Quran.
no, I'm saying that you're telling me that I don't look at the
No.
overwhelming evidence,
No.
but then you don't look at the
misquote
overwhelming
me.
evidence.
You said.
when it comes to
You
evolution.
said.
If you
Your
don't- if you
words
don't
were
believe
this.
that we
I
evolved
believe
from a fish.
evolution is stronger evidence than the Quran. That's what you said.
Yeah, I
That's
think
what
it
your
is.
words were.
I think that's
Yeah.
stronger.
And I'm
Yeah.
going to be honest with you.
No. What I mean by that is there's more evidence to say that evolution is true than there is to say that the Quran and Islam is true.
No, there's
Have
not.
you looked at all the evidence?
No, there's not.
Have you looked at all the evidence?
I've not seen all the evidence
What's the
on either
evidence for the
side.
Quran?
but
Okay, so how can you make that
did-
assumption
So
then?
15 years ago, I did study Islam.
that's not what I
for 2
asked you.
years.
That's not what
so
I asked
I'm
you.
not an expert.
I didn't
by all
ask you
means,
that. I
and
didn't
I'm
ask
sure
you that.
you've figured
You
that
made an
out by now.
assumption.
Studied Islam
I said
where?
you made an assumption. I'm asking you a question. Have you studied all the evidence to support evolution and Islam and the
you?
Quran? No, but I'm not making the claim. You are.
No. I'm saying that it's almost 100% true that evolution is
You haven't
true.
studied it, though, have you?
But according to scientists and peer
You can't
reviews.
say 100%. Look, can I give you the Islamic opinion in regards to evolution?
Okay, so when I make a phone call, I know that it's going to work, even though I don't
can
understand
can I
how
give you
it's
the
going to
Islamic?
work.
Can I give you the Islamic? Because I think we're getting mixed up here.
Okay.
Islam has no problem with evolution.
No, I know it doesn't, but
It has
a
no-
lot of
it has no-
a lot of Muslims.
Let me just finish.
Why was you mocking
Let
me?
me just finish.
Huh?
Why was you mocking
Hamza,
me?
please, Hamza.
I'm not mocking
Lister,
you.
let me just finish. Lister.
Can I
It
accept
was just a crude way
Islam,
of saying.
Lister, Lister,
did we evolve
Islam,
from a fish?
Lister, Lister, Lister.
It's not really helpful.
Lister,
It's not a helpful sentence.
Okay, Islam has
Right.
no problem with evolution.
I know it doesn't.
Islam has no problem with adaptation.
But a lot of Muslims
Can I
don't
just
believe in
please?
evolution.
But that does not necessitate whether God exists or doesn't exist.
No, I know.
That's my point.
I know, but
People
my
can
point
believe.
is,
People can believe all sorts of things, right?
they can, yes,
but that does
when
not.
You go
that-
over,
but
when
that
you go
does not.
against scientific evidence.
But
It's
that-
a lot different than
but then-
going
but
against
then if they're going
a
so-
religious subjective.
But if they're then going over
evidence.
scientific evidence regarding evolution, does that mean Islam is false?
Sorry, say that again.
If those people are going against evolutionary science, and if it's highly likely to be true, let's say for argument's sake, does that mean God does not exist? Does that mean Islam is
never-
false?
I'm just talking about the hypocrisy.
But it's irrelevant then.
Asking me,
But
telling
it's-
me that I go
no,
against
but
the evidence
No,
when,
but my point to you.
when
my
a lot
po-
of Muslims go against the evidence of evolution.
So therefore, you're saying that you should do the same. Is that what you're saying?
I'm not saying I should do the
So then,
same.
what's the relevance of saying that?
No, because what I'm saying is the evidence that evolution is true. There's much more evidence to say that evolution is true.
But how do you
than
know
there
that
is-
when you haven't studied both
Okay,
in
fine.
detail?
Okay, then that's my belief,
Right.
Based on what?
based upon
based on my
Hunch.
research.
hunch, not research.
Based on your
you haven't
prejudices.
researched.
It's based on the
What-
fact
what-
that scientists agree. Help me out here. Scientists,
It's based on
pretty
provable
much
facts.
provable
Because
facts.
scientific
100%.
theories are
How is
different
he
from
gonna help
normal
you?
theories. How am I going to
Yeah, how are you going to help? I don't understand.
We know each other.
Okay.
We spoke.
One second.
I
Hamza.
recognise
Listen,
that.
The expert, all right.
listen, let me just explain something to you. Hold on. Let me just explain something to you, right? Islam has no problem with evolution.
I know it doesn't.
Right. Islam,
But a lot of Muslims
but
do.
Muslims are irrelevant in this
Why do you keep
conversation.
pointing to other people? We're in a conversation
No,
here
no.
with us.
No, but you don't believe it.
What
I don't
Muslims-
believe I vote
what-
for fish.
What,
No, I
what-
don't.
what
There you
Muslims
go.
believe is irrelevant. What Islam, the doctrine of Islam, i.e. the Quran, what comes from God is what's relevant. I could have a wrong interpretation of the Quran, right? And you could point that out. That does not nullify Islam. It nullifies my opinion.
And who defines the right interpretation of the Quran?
Do you believe we evolved from fish?
No, hold on, Hamza.
Sorry?
Do you believe we
Hamza,
evolved from
Hamza,
fish?
hold on. Hamza, let me just
From
finish.
fish, directly
Let me-
from fish.
Let me just
Fish,
make my
monkey,
point.
man.
No, let me just make my
It wasn't
point.
fish, monkey, man.
But
It was much more complicated
he
than
believes
that.
that anyway. Okay, but it's
This
not
is-
fish.
this
You're
is why
saying
it's a
that we
silly
evolved from
question.
fish.
This is why
It's
it's a
something
silly
that I
question.
call
Okay,
polite
it's
a time,
heckling,
man.
which is something that
No, no,
Muslims
yeah.
do a lot, which is not to disprove the
Guys,
argument of the other
it's us
person,
at
it's to
time.
ridicule it as much as possible. You're saying we evolved from fish.
So I said, do you believe it?
Sorry?
Do you believe it?
There are studies that prove
Where did you
that
phrase
it?
animals that live on Earth have evolved from animals that lived on
So do you believe we evolved from fish? You think your ancestors have evolved from fish?
It's a
If you
reductio ad
ignore
absurdum,
all the different steps of
logical
evolution
fallacy.
from the fish and to man, then yes.
Okay. Does that negate the existence of God? No. So that's the point. That's the
But
point that
I know,
I'm
but
making.
the point I'm making is you keep saying that I go against all the
What's the proof?
historical
proof of
evidence
what? That I evolved from a fish.
supposedly overwhelming in favour of Islam.
there's scientific
But when it
proof
comes
of it.
to
You can look it up.
evolution,
You can research about
Muslims
it.
on a
Show me
large
what?
scale
I don't
basis
have the proof of
ignore
me right now.
the-
Sorry?
I've explained
the
to you.
evidence.
I've
Google it.
explained to you.
Let's pray, guys. That's the time.
Yeah,
we can come back.
even if evolution is I won't say fact, but I'll say the best possible explanation as to why things exist, right? Does that falsify the existence of a creator? That's my point. No, and that is my point. Now, if some Muslims believe certain things that are contrary to science, let's say for argument's sake, there are two variables. Number one, science could adapt and change over time, and it does. Or it might not. It might be actually what actually happened. But either way, that does not negate the existence of a creator.
Of course.
And that's my
Why
point.
do you think the belief in God is more certain than what science tells you? Why do you think it's more certain?
Because science does not deal with the metaphysical world.
Do you understand what
It
science
deals
is?
with the physical world, right? How things work. I have no issue or problem relying on science to tell me how things work. I think that's a very sensible thing to do.
Do you know what science is?
But science
You believe
doesn't
in a
deal.
conspiracy of
Science
scientists,
does
so I
not
don't think you
deal
believe in
with God.
Who, me?
It's not interested in God. It's not interested in whether angels exist or whether there's a hell or a heaven, because it doesn't concern itself with that. And number two, the perimeters of science And the way in finding out things is through observation and experimentation, right? You cannot create an observation of something that is not observed. God.
So what happens when you
Give me
make an
examples.
What example of?
You're saying you cannot observe something that is not observed.
You can't
What do you
observe
mean
God.
by that?
You can't observe
If
God.
something is not, if God does not want human beings to directly observe Him, how can science prove or disprove that God exists?
You know, there's something very similar to what you're saying, and the thing is quantum physics. In fact, quantum mechanics to be exact. When it has been proven that molecules, that electrons have a different behavior when they are being observed and when they're not being observed.
That's what I was talking about. That
Oh
tree.
no!
Yeah. Okay.
No, don't go to double slit experiment.
No,
Why
okay.
not?
No, okay. What does that mean, though?
Honestly, are you going to the?
There have been experiments done
Yes.
on electrons that they have a different behavior when observed and when not observed. I'm just
It's
telling
like
you
I've gone back in
something.
time 3 years. He's bringing up the double slit experiment.
The who?
Double slit experiment.
The who?
Double slit experiment.
Okay, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
the
that
molecules,
one.
when they're being observed, they have a different behaviour, so they become waves. Please watch our videos.
Can we go?
Let's go pray.
Can we go and pray, and then we can have another discussion?
Would you like to have that discussion? Would you like us to end that so you
I
never
would
bring that
like
up
to
again?
have a philosophical discussion about the certainty of God. That is the discussion I really wanted to have today.
The
But,
certainty of God.
Yes.
And what would that entail?
It would entail me asking you, why are you certain that God exists, and why are you certain that your specific God is the real one God?
Okay, but what I'm saying to you is that what evidence would be sufficient for you to accept
That's the
that
discussion.
parameter?
That's the discussion.
What evidence would be sufficient for me to accept your God as a certainty? The answer to that is none.
So then,
Because knowledge is something ultimately flawed. It's something incomplete.
So you've already come with a predisposition.
Why have the
Yes,
discussion?
but I want to know your answer to that
But
question.
it's irrelevant because you've already
My
said.
answer to that question, I can give you a long answer.
No, but you've already accepted that your predisposition is that regardless of what evidence I give you, it will be unacceptable.
I haven't accepted that as an absolute certainty.
What's your claim?
Because as I claimed
Pray and
in
say
the
amen.
Bible
We're gonna go and pray.
We're gonna go
this
pray.
world-
I want to know what's the point you're making?
I wanted to have a philosophical discussion about the existence of God and about the certainty of God.